This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
It's Monday, March 30th, and it is time to go out of bounds after the Texas Children's Houston Open, a big, dare I say, transcendent weekend for the PGA Tour in the game of golf. I'm Josh Durso, joined as always by Nate Sharman. Gary Woodland pulled off the improbable yesterday, putting on an absolute clinic at Memorial Park. He won, he closed with a 3-under 67 to finish 21 under par and win by 5 shots over Nicolai Højgaard. He controlled the tournament from the start and notched his first win since the 2019 U.S. Open. Nate, what an incredible weekend for him, not just on the golf course, but off the golf course. That battle that included brain surgery and PTSD that followed. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, it's just one of the coolest wins in golf history, if not the coolest, right? Gary Woodland, who has brain surgery in 2023, talks about his battles with PTSD the last few years since that, and he goes on and wins this event and breaks the scoring record while he does it. And Gary Woodland's a guy who's been a winner throughout his whole career, right? Won that 2019 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, that illustrious win where, you know, everyone remembers that one where he's chipping on the green right towards the end of that round, and just winning at Pebble is always an illustrious win for anybody. But it's just so cool. I mean, how Gary Woodland put his foot on the gas, right, and took down Nicolai Højgaard. They were one stroke. He was one stroke up on Nicolai entering the round. They were tied early in the round, and then Gary Woodland stepped on the gas and didn't look back. You know, won by 6 and was able to get that PGA Tour victory. What's unbelievable about it to me, Josh, is what he does with the driver. Right, Gary Woodland's 41 years old, going to be 42 here pretty soon in the next month. He's still getting it to 195 mile an hour ball speeds off the tee, you know, hitting drives at least 350 yards. There was a number of drives yesterday that he hit over 350 yards. So Gary Woodland still getting it done with the high club head speed, despite being in his 40s. Just an incredible story.
Not only that, but also, you know, that golf swing looks a whole lot different than it did in 2019. It is like he has completely reinvented his golf game, and he credited his coach and his team and everybody that's been around him the last 3 years that's made this comeback possible. And just the amount of gratitude that he clearly had as that round came to a close. The post-round interview on the green was incredible. The press conference where he sort of dove into the experiences that he's had. Even this week, you know, it was touch and go there for a bit. He had an interaction with a fan near the ropes that kind of made things get a little cloudy there for him for a minute. He had a tough time after that round, but then he just dialed back in, got back to it, and here he is. You know, Nate, I think the most interesting thing to me is just with all of the mental things that he was clearly juggling in life and with his golf game to dominate the way he did. He was in control the entire round. And in a season where we have watched player after player choke up leads on Sunday, he just stayed in control the entire time. Like no one was going to catch him.
Yeah, a proven winner on the tour, right? A guy that knows what to do in this situation. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, I like what you said about earlier about it transcending sports, right? And I think it really does in the sense where you're watching that post-round interview on the green, and he talks about how if it can help one person, my story can help one person, you know, get through what they're battling. You know, everyone has their battles, right? With whether it be themselves or whether it be anything else, not necessarily just golf, but in any parts of the world. And you know, that's enough to bring a tear to the eye to any person watching, right? It's just so inspirational and so cool that Gary Woodland is able to battle this PTSD and battle this brain surgery that he had not even that long ago. It's just really cool. Yeah, I mean, he talks about the PTSD. He talked about that not more than 2 months ago, about a month ago, right before the Players. And it's just amazing how Gary Woodland's been able to accelerate this career and, like you said, remake the golf swing, but still make it look sort of regular in the sense where he didn't do that much to get to 195 ball speed. We haven't seen a guy do this since maybe Bryson, and Bryson looked totally different when he did that, when he put on 40 pounds and he upped his club head speed, right, in the beefcake years. So it's pretty cool what Gary Woodland's been able to do at 42, almost 42 years old, able to get that ball speed up there and be a complete player around the greens as well too. So just an emotional win for Gary Woodland around that green on 18. With the Gary chants going from the crowd. It was just a really, really cool scene.
And Minwoo Lee, who was right there in the last group, hyping up the crowd, getting everybody even more into it than they already were. They were chanting Gary's name before he even rolled in that last putt, which, by the way, wasn't a gimme. Obviously, he was going to be able to two-putt from there no matter what. So there wasn't any immense pressure. But, I'm sure there was still a lot of pressure and a lot of thoughts running through his head as he looked over that putt, even if just thinking about the journey that he had been on over the last 3-4 years, where, you're not just thinking about like whether you're going to be able to compete or win a golf tournament. When doctors or surgeons are opening up your head, you're thinking about life at that point, right? So just an incredible story, goes way beyond golf to me. This is one of the coolest and best sports stories of the last couple of years. Frankly, like last night and early this morning, I was trying to think of comparables. I can't really think of anything. A lot of people are going to draw comparison to the Anthony Kim situation. What he came back from, obviously, a lot of different things going on in his life. Physical, mental, of course, long layoff. He gets a win over on Live about a month and a half ago. But this is just for a guy who had won a major. This is one of the most interesting and transcending stories in sport.
Yeah, just the battle back, right? Be able to say, at 40 years old, you have this happen to you. It's easy to say, my professional golf career is done, right? But Gary Woodland's able to say, no, I'm not done, and I can still win. Yeah. And it's just incredible. I think we could talk about this for hours and hours upon end about how cool this story is, and just there's so many different elements inside of it to me that where Gary Woodland is able to get this win and come back, and this comeback story, and it's just so cool. And in a golf season where we've seen, Anthony Kim was another story, another comeback story that we talked about, right? And it's only the end of March. We haven't hit the first major yet of the golf season, and we already have multiple really, really cool golf stories that come out of the PGA Tour season and just a professional golf season as a whole.
Does this change how you think about Gary Woodland headed into the Masters?
I mean, it proves even more that he can win, right? This guy is a proven winner, right? A 5-time PGA Tour victory winner and a major winner in the past, and he's done it now in the year 2026. So definitely a guy that if you see his name on the leaderboard, never count him out ever. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's shift gears and talk about another story that unfortunately transcended the game of golf. Tiger Woods was arrested in Florida after a rollover crash near his Jupiter Island home, where he reportedly clipped a truck while attempting to pass it at speed. Authorities said he showed signs of impairment but tested negative for alcohol, leading investigators to suspect drugs or prescription medication. He also refused a urine test, resulting in an additional charge. He was held for about 8 hours as required by law down there in Florida and released. Now he faces some misdemeanor charges, a DUI, property damage, etc. But I guess there's a couple different parts of this we can talk about, right? First is the news itself and where this leaves Tiger Woods and the PGA Tour because of the role Tiger Woods is playing in creating this future version of the PGA Tour, but also the reaction to the news, which I think actually kind of stole the spotlight from what the meat and potatoes I think should have been in terms of what people should have been talking about regarding the news. So I guess let's start with the news itself. If you're, Brian Rolap and company, what are you doing this morning? What's your thought process?
Yeah, first off, it's really important to say that no one got hurt. Tiger, no one was in the car besides Tiger. He didn't get hurt. And then, no other pedestrians were around. So luckily, that could have been a really messy situation, especially if someone else got hurt, right? So it's pretty amazing to hear that no one's injured. But yeah, I think there's going to be some internal kind of looks, whether it be Brian Rolap or the rest of the tour that see what we want out of our leadership. But at the end of the day, he's still Tiger Woods. I mean, now it's his second DUI and is what, third or fourth car crash and car involved crash, right? So I don't think it necessarily changes that. He's still a guy that's really looked up to in terms of PGA Tour golf and in the professional golf scene as well. So I don't think much changes in that regard, but certainly not looking like we're going to see Tiger Woods here at the Masters here in a couple weeks. Like I came on here last week and I said I think he's going to play, and I think I've done a total 180. I don't think he's going to play at all, and I think everyone thinks that.
Yeah, the playing I think is completely out. I'm kind of gone back and forth on this whole thing with what the tour should do. On one hand, I think it's pretty easy to say, he probably shouldn't be in any leadership roles within the tour right now. Whether you're talking
a leave
about,
of absence would be fine. Would make sense.
Yeah, like whether you're talking about a leave or whether you're talking about him just sort of taking a few steps back so he's not in the limelight anymore for a bit, continue working behind the scenes to, make the schedule. It seems to be he has a pretty big role in the future schedule of the PGA Tour. So, continue doing the work behind the scenes, but maybe take a couple steps back on the public side. The other side of this is, I remember back in the early 2010s when, Tiger had first gone through all of everybody called them transgressions back then. And I remember, having this sort of like, for me, it was a light bulb moment because I had grown up watching people like idolize Tiger Woods, and just putting these like larger than life expectations on a guy who was just really good at golf. Like the assumption that just because you are really good at a sport or any particular thing, whether it's acting, whatever we idolize in celebrity culture here in the United States, whatever it is that you're good at does not mean that you are good at all of the other aspects of life or that you are on high moral ground in all of the other aspects of life. And this is just the latest reminder that we've seen plenty of reasons over the last 15 years why, we just shouldn't expect athletes, celebrities in general, to be role models beyond the place where they're doing their work. And watching some of the reaction to this news was very odd, to say the least. There were lots of people just, loading on saying that, he never should have been in the limelight at all because of his past issues. And, it really sort of like end of world type reaction, all the way to, defending it, to, being extremely emotional about it when there isn't really any clear personal tie between the folks who are saying the things online and the man himself. Just a very, very strange thing. But again, to me, symptomatic of an era when, anybody in their late 20s or 30s grew up through a time when, the best athletes in the world were idolized way beyond what they did on the field or court or golf course, and just isn't a healthy dynamic in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, there's a lot of Tiger fanboys out there that are going to defend him here. I think that's interesting, but yeah, definitely a weird situation in that sense. I would go farther to say on your celebrity talk there. It's interesting. Unless your name is Scotty Scheffler, I think he's a pretty much guy you look up to. Besides the arrest and the time he spent in jail, but it's pretty funny that we're talking about that in terms of Tiger Woods, where he was making this big comeback push, and now it's going to be derailed a little bit. But hopefully he gets the help he needs. Right, that's the most important thing, and we can see him. Hopefully, he signed up to play in the Senior Open. He was talking about playing the Masters, so maybe he's not that far away from playing golf in a professional sense again. But obviously, he has a lot more to figure out before that happens.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Scotty Scheffler because he was one of the people that I was thinking of in terms of the modern crop of players.
Right.
And you know what? I think he'd be the first person to say, especially given the things we've heard him talk about with his faith and where he ranks golf in his life and what's actually important to him. I think he'd be the first person, one of the first people to say, "Don't put me on that pedestal. Like, I'm just another person. Like, if you're looking for something more in life, find that thing somewhere else." He'd probably point people to faith.
To faith, right? Yes.
But it goes back to the point. Like, these are just ordinary people with extraordinary skill, timing, and a bunch of other things that culminated in them becoming larger than life figures in the thing they do. Tiger Woods is no exception to that. And putting these larger than life expectations on him off the golf course, not defending what he did. Driving under the influence is a no-go, period, full stop. But this is, the reaction to the news is what you get when that happens for a very long time. But, we'll see what happens, and we'll see how all of this shakes out, what the tour does. Do you think the tour puts out any kind of like statement or press release this week at all?
No, I don't. I think they probably would have done it already. I think they look at it as it's not their priority, right? It's not their prerogative to do that, to jump in on Tiger's behalf. I will be interested to see if Tiger or his PR team or whatever they want to call it, they put out a statement, or if Tiger talks publicly in the next few weeks, certainly around the Masters. I'll be interested to see what that'll do from a PR perspective. I don't know if it's necessarily important for you to get out in front of the mic in a quick manner, but we know Tiger enjoys speaking with the media. He usually does it a few times a year. So we'll see what happens in that sense. But yeah, we'll see if Tiger or his team puts out a statement even on social media. I'm sure that'll happen at some point.
Yeah. And of course, goes without saying, we hope he gets the help that he needs and everything like that, and takes care of the stuff that he's got going on in his personal life, because clearly this is not a new thing. This is something that's been going on for a long time. YouTube golf, little something new. So we got a new YouTube back golf tour coming soon. We don't have a date yet, but the Your Golf Tour was announced last week by Grant Horvat and the Bryan Bros. It's built around the top golf influencers competing in a structured multi-event format. Going to feature around 16 creator players across 4 events, culminating in a $1 million championship out in Vegas. Interesting. I wasn't exactly sure how I felt about it when the news popped about this. I guess my question to you, Nate, is there room for this kind of series? How do we think this does? Like, where does this fit in the golf internet landscape?
I think there's always room for more content in the golf YouTube landscape. I think we've talked about this before, and people are loving to watch golf on YouTube, right? Yeah. And I think that's interesting. But from my own perspective, I think I like to watch YouTube golf. I like to watch Bob Does Sports and stuff. And whether it be Foreplay puts out a fun video with like Ludwig Aber, they just put one out with him. And I think that's really interesting to watch, because I watch those videos for the interview with if Bob Does Sports has Max Homa, they're talking with him and they're getting him in a space where they're not in 4 walls, right? And they're going to tell stories and stuff like that too. And I'm also watching because some of these golfers are just like us, right? They're 15 handicaps and they're not going to shoot 72. They're going to shoot, whatever their score may be. And, I find that interesting. I look at this golf tour and there's still not a ton of details on it yet. And it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I'm not going to necessarily want to watch a golf on YouTube that's really, really high quality. I think if I want to watch really good golf, I watch any PGA Tour event. I mean, we saw one of the coolest stories ever in Gary Woodland winning this week. Why would you not want to watch that in my mind versus watching YouTube golf? You even look at good golf in the form of on YouTube, like Barstool puts on an Internet Invitational every year, and they're going to do it again this year. Not every year, but they're going to do it again this year. And you're watching that, and you say, well, that's a lot of good golfers, and you love that. But they're still playing a team event in that sense, right? The finals were 3v3, and that brings a little bit of a different element to it. So I think if you're going to watch good golfers, I'd rather watch the tour, but still definitely is room for this on the YouTube golf scene. So we'll see when more details come out about the Your Golf Tour.
Yeah, I think to me, like, they have to find a way to differentiate themselves.
Yes,
like,
definitely.
People don't want to just watch plain old stroke play golf.
Yeah, it can't be 72 holes to stroke play or however many holes, 18 holes. I think it's got it. Like I just talked about that with the Internet Invitational at Barstool. It's a 3-on-3 event. At the end, and I think you need like what you said. You need to find a way to differentiate.
Yeah, and not only that, I would also say the Internet Invitational was successful, I think, for 2 reasons. One, the suspense and drama of it. You really couldn't tell who was going to win because it was objectively fair. But also the scarcity of it. Like, if you did the Internet Invitational 4 times a year, it would get cold so fast. It would it would just be doing normal numbers quick, right? So that's sort of where I'm coming down on this. I feel like it starts hot. The initial event or 2 will probably do really well. And then I think it will sort of find its place in the middle of the road somewhere. Obviously, the internet's a big enough place where it doesn't really matter if you have the biggest audience or the biggest event. You can still monetize it and you can still make it work. So I think it'll work no matter what. But I don't necessarily know that this is going to be like a landmark thing in golf the way that the Internet Invitational was and will be as they roll out future iterations of that. But it's just another sign. To me, it's just another sign that this is, the internet and YouTube golf, as much as I give them a hard time a lot on the show, as much as guys like Rory McIlroy, sort of act a little standoffish toward, the internet golf and the role that that's played in growing the game compared to the professional game. This is just another example of that trend happening. It's real. You can't ignore it. I'm just not so sure it's going to be this massive thing. My question for you, Nate, is, does it do better than Live on views?
Oh, man, I think so. Yes, I think YouTube golf and these guys, the Bryan Bros and Grant Horvat, have a huge following on YouTube.
Yeah.
and they're really good at that. And one more thing from me on that, I was pretty happy to see Rochester fan favorite Michael Block being involved in that. That's the guy we saw make a hole-in-one down the stretch at that Oak Hill in that PGA Championship, and a guy that's very, very on both sides for people, right? He's kind of corny in that sense, but it'll be fun to watch a guy like Michael Block, who's very outwards and with his emotions too, especially. So a guy that I like watching. I think he's funny, so it should be good in that sense having him around.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this thing actually plays out.
What do you think on the views standpoint? That's a good question. I didn't think about that.
My assumption would be that it will, just based on, you're going to have multiple creators marketing this thing. And, if we know anything about the internet, is strength of influencers and their audiences and how good they are at mobilizing those audiences. I think they're going to find a market for this thing. I don't think it's going to be, this game-changing thing where all of a sudden we're talking about, the YouTube golf tour being just as important as, the PGA Tour or anything like that. But I think it'll do much better than LIV, just because LIV has struggled to find footing, mainly because they don't have the influencers and the personalities beyond a couple of names. Bryson DeChambeau is the biggest name in online golf. You've got Phil Mickelson, right? He's there too, but he's not quite young enough to be, I think, as marketable to that digital audience. But here you're going to have professional marketing people essentially running a tour that's catering to a YouTube audience. I have to assume that it's going to do very well. And I also think that YouTube and Google are going to put their foot on the gas too, to help this thing boost and go, because this is going to be as connected to them as it is to any of the individual creators too. So I think it does much better than LIV. And I actually think that becomes a bigger, another kind of black mark, I suppose, for LIV is, week in, week out views of these events compared to LIV events might get kind of lopsided.
Yeah.
It could.
Just wait until LIV fans start talking about how we have billions and billions of people watching on the app and we can't track that. So just get ready for that.
Well, that's just the thing. I mean, that can be true. But like when you're only running, 30, 40, 50,000 concurrents, on YouTube, and then, Grant Horvat posts one video where he just plays 9 holes with Phil Mickelson and it does, 5 million. I mean, with all due respect, good luck. Like I don't see how you don't get absolutely bullied by this new YouTube golf startup. And again, the money and the traditional dynamics do not matter to LIV, right? PIF, they do not care. But at the end of the day, I think it's another credibility challenge for LIV to try and figure out and navigate. So, hey, we'll see what happens. Nate, you are already looking ahead to the Valero. We are staying in Texas. We got a pretty good list of names here playing.
Oh yeah, we are so close to the Masters, Josh. It's really exciting. This event's really fun because obviously the winner can punch their ticket to the Masters if they're not already in, right? And we see, I was interested in looking through the odds boards. There's like 20 or 25 players playing this week in Texas, getting ready for the Masters. That's more than I can remember, but I think I could be wrong in that sense where, obviously it's not a very far trip to get from Texas over to Augusta, Georgia for the Masters. But yeah, just getting one more tournament round in, headlined by Tommy Fleetwood, Ludwig Aberg, Jordan Spieth, the hometown boy playing in this event. So it should be pretty good. Brian Harman won last year, punched his tickets to the Masters. So we'll see if another guy that's not in the field will be able to get into the Masters field with a win this week. I think that's the most interesting thing for me to watch.
Do we have a winner pick yet?
I don't have one yet. I'll have one. Just stay tuned on TikTok. We'll come out with one. And we'll have to take a look at the odds boards and take a look at some recent trends and get to a winner.
Can I just say right now, and obviously this is not a pick, I'm just saying, I want so badly Jordan Spieth to win.
Yes, I agree with that.
This would be a great event for him to win. Obviously, Texas guy, it would be great to see him win this event, but I don't know that I would feel confident enough to put any money on him going into this week.
Is Colin Morikawa is playing, right? He's going to have the tune-up before the Masters, right? Last time we saw him, he was pulling out.
Yeah, I would assume so.
I forgot to look. I'm pretty sure he's playing.
Yeah, and the other part of that as well is how does he come back from that?
Yeah, that's
in
going to
the
be something to
field,
watch for sure.
But, where is he on the odds board? And then do you take him, even though prior to that, his form was
really good,
basically best, on tour, his ball striking was back. He was putting really well. Has he taken a step back because of this back thing that he had a couple weeks ago? We'll see. Hopefully he's still there, but we'll see here in a couple of days.
It's good to see that he's playing though, and not just, going to show up on the grounds of Augusta National and have a ton of question marks around him. So at least we get to see him play some golf here before the Masters.
Yeah. Hey, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be back next Monday. In the meantime, subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow us over on TikTok for more in-between episodes. For Nate Sharman, I'm Josh Durso. You know the drill. Whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.